Hello, everyone. This session is entitled Looking Towards a Crash, Preparing Your Organization Team. I'm Kevin Stewart, and I'm Head of Engineering at Harvest. Today, we're going on the impact of financial downturns on our organizations and teams. Our goal is to share tools, techniques, and experiences that may help you better support your teams. I'm joined by Jossie Haines, Senior Director of Platform Engineering at Tile, Michelle Grover, Chief Information Officer at Twilio, and Yvette Pasqua, former CTO at Meetup. Welcome, panel. Let's start with our first question that I'll direct to the entire panel. Many of our organizations, due to COVID-19, have experienced some level of contraction. How has the impact to the business communicated? How was the impact to the business communicated to people, and how was it received? Why don't we start with Yvette?
Sure. My go-to method for communicating about things like contractions and layoffs from, frankly, trying lots of things and a lot of them not working very well is to really focus on two-way communications and do those in small groups. I found that two-way communications, things like small Q&As, small Ask Me Anything sessions, provide a safer space for people to ask questions and for others to hear answers to questions they might not feel comfortable asking. I think as a leader, it just allows you to also be more nuanced and authentic with your own communication because you're in a smaller group and it's real time. It's not a prepared talk. You don't have 150 eyes watching you and watching your every move. And you can really get into the details with follow-up questions as well and start to really build back trust in those smaller groups in a more authentic way. I think 8 to 10 people is a sweet spot in grouping people together on teams that they work with every day. Especially if they're a healthy team, also creates a safer environment for them to ask the hard questions. And I've often had to schedule 10 or 15 of these in a couple of week period to keep the group small enough, but able to get through all of your teams. It's a lot of time, a lot of effort. It sometimes can be draining as a leader, but I honestly think it's 100% worth it. And one of the best ways to rebuild trust with your team following this kind of tough communication.
Great. Michelle, what's been your experience?
It's similar in respect to Yvette, trying to get to the direct individual contributors and really making it okay for them to feel what they feel. This is such an unprecedented circumstance that it didn't have a playbook. So what we did is we spent a huge amount of time having kind of blind pulse surveys and tons and tons of happy hours and tons of just get together sessions that reminded people that it's really okay to feel what you're feeling, to deal with what you're dealing with, and to ask us. And we spend a lot of time too asking, what is it you need from us to make it easier for you during this time? And we also were just our own selves. I have a 14-year-old son. He would pop in. I would let everybody know he popped in. I turned the camera around, let them know he was there so that, and I would tell my team, and just when I would be on with the ICs, don't apologize. You're going to say hi. I have a kid. We could chat. The dog bark. These are things. So making it okay for them to feel what they were feeling, be themselves, and then come back by extension. And now let's talk about how we get work done, how we deal with this, how we work through this kind of communication.
Great. And Jossie, what's been your experience with this, the impact of this financial downturn, and how did your people to it?
Yeah, so, along with what Michelle and Yvette have said, making sure you're reaching out to the ICs. We did a number of surveys, one about how people felt about going back to the office, right? What are people's, challenges at home right now? One of the things we're actually looking at is, now that schools are about to start, like, is there something we can do for our parents who are going to have kids at home to help them, right? Like, this is a new situation. And your team members need challenges. One of the things I value a lot about Tile is we've always had a very transparent culture. And I think one of the things that was really good is right after we started, COVID happened and the downturn happened. We actually had our CFO kind of walk us through our financials at an all hands, right? And kind of say, hey, this is the state of where we are. Like they literally showed us, I mean, we're something people buy at retail, right? So obviously that got impacted. And they literally showed us like the charts of like how the numbers went, where the predictions were, like, and we're very transparent with. And so I really appreciated that.
Fantastic. So things were, of course, very different before COVID. So prior to the current global pandemic, what effective methods of communicating organizational financial health have you experienced? Again, pre-pandemic, so we can see what the difference was. Why don't we start with Michelle?
So typical meetings. So before our financial earnings, we would have conversations, our internal version of this. And just, from an engineering perspective, it was a little bit easier because you're working directly with product. Product is working with sales. You have an idea of, are we trending in the right direction? Are we churning out product? Are we churning out the features? And so we kept close ties. We had OKRs and KPIs set for the company as well that tied back into the overall financial perspective. So those were the most successful communications for our organizations.
And Jossie, how about you?
Yeah, so I think before we like I said, Tile is a retail business, and so we've always had a very transparent culture, and I think that that's been great, right? At our all hands, we kind of share like, hey, it's Prime Day, right? How did we do compared to last year, right? And I think the team really appreciates having that transparency, and similar, and since we're a private company, we don't have announcements for revenue and things like that, but we do feel it's really important, especially during holidays, which is when we get the majority of our revenue, to be really transparent with our employees. So usually at every all hands, which happens every other week, like we're literally seeing the chart, like how we're doing during the holiday period.
That's great. And Yvette, what have you seen pre-pandemic as effective methods of communicating organizational financial health?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually seen a wide gamut, but not many as effective as Jossie and Michelle both said. Kind of regular cadence, all hands communications of financial health reviews where questions can be asked and it could really be a dialogue. I think this is a clear sign of a high performing company leadership team, honestly. I've seen that not be the case many times, and it seems so obvious. But I think there's a real fear of some leadership teams to not communicate financials in a transparent way regularly. But I think the teams that do are operationally stronger. I think they're better at communicating why decisions have been made and giving folks the context they need. And I think they're frankly just better at focusing a company, which I think is a huge part of being a successful company. So, from what I've seen, if you're not doing that, you should really figure out why. And it's usually rooted in the leadership team actually not being comfortable working with one another, being a high performing team themselves.
Excellent. Jossie, I wanted to ask you, why is it more important now than ever to focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion during financial downturns?
Yeah, so, I feel like D&I budgets are one of those things that usually end up getting cut when we go into a financial downturn. And yet, especially with COVID-19, we're likely to go into a diversity recession if we don't address this. So 55% of the people who have been laid off are women. And if you go to women of color, that actually goes even higher. And then if you look at the number of people who are hospitalized for COVID in the US, 33% of those people are Black, but yet there's only 13% Blacks in the US population. And it's not just about being equitable and feeling good too. Diversity is costing the unfairness in the tech industry is costing us $16 billion per year on average. And here's where I actually get that number. So if you say that it costs about $104,000 to lose somebody between productivity loss, having to replace them, recruiter fees, etc., And then you take the fact that the numbers show that 37% of people who leave tech leave due to unfairness. Those numbers actually add up $16 billion per year. And so it's something we need to be focusing on even more now.
I agree.
Hear, hear.
So, Yvette, what's your approach to dealing with known unknowns? For example, many parents will soon be facing the issue of balancing work and an unknown amount of additional responsibility for their children's schooling. As a leader, how do you balance empathy and understanding while keeping the business moving forward?
I mean, I'm one of those parents, right? My daughter's going back to school in September, and I don't know what that's going to look like yet, and how it's going to work. And I think that's the first thing as a leader, is being authentic and vulnerable with your own team and letting them know that you have the same situations. You can empathize because you're going through some things that they are going through as well, and being vulnerable. Not being afraid to talk about it and bring it up with them. And step two, I think, just as a leader, just listen, and listen some more, just to be there for them, to vent. If they want you to brainstorm solutions with them, offer that as a coach. People really need that human connection with their leader more than ever when they fear unknowns. And that fear is really hard to deal with. I also think it's really important to give people time to process. People process at very different paces. Some people process in minutes, hours, days. And I know some great folks I've worked with that it really takes them kind of weeks to process unknowns and the fear that goes along with that. And it's really hard. It's really hard for them. And for some folks, it's easier. So really get to know your people and give them the space and time to process. I think one practical thing you can do as a manager and help keep things on track, help keep the business moving, is work with folks to set realistic and clear goals while completely acknowledging the distractions and the unknowns. Those goals may not be the same goals that were there before, and talk about how that's okay. But also talk about how setting clear goals will probably make them feel a little better about the unknowns, right? And working with them to set things that are realistic and work with them. I guess just the last thing that I've seen, I had a GM once, my boss, during the 2008 crash, who kept painting a picture of what things would look like when we got out of the crash, right? And she kept reminding us that crashes only last X months, and we're already X months through it. And, even the longest crashes only last, I forget how many months she used, right? X number of months, and we're almost already there. So if data, is your go-to, like, we're almost out of it. And this is what things will look like and feel like when we're out of it, even though it was still fearful. We didn't know. And we felt like at that moment it would go on forever. I think as a leader, kind of painting the picture of how things will feel when you come out of the unknown and get back into more of a known realm really helps keep your team motivated, but maybe in a more realistic way.
Great. Thank you. So, Jossie, what are some of the more effective feedback loops that can be created between the business and product development teams?
So, this is actually something I deal with on a daily basis because I do our partner integrations at Tile. So I actually work very closely with our business team. And so, I feel like part of my role is really kind of shielding the engineers from some of the crazy stuff the partners want and ensuring that it becomes sanity before I actually go take it back to our engineering teams. And so I really do think, especially now that we're all remote, though, having a good process for when something transitions from this like ideation phase with like business into actually becoming a real product, right? And so something we've been working on is actually having a process where, during that like BD ideation phase, like BD is really driving it, but they have a kickoff where they include product. And, once it's really going to be something that, yes, we've committed to delivering, then it really transitions So the product owner and engineering are driving it with the project manager, and there are some milestones there. And so I think it's really about having like a clear process, especially as you're bringing in new businesses, on how you make that transition from something being like a prototype to, okay, now this thing is going to become part of the real product, and how does it actually impact the rest of our business?
Wow, great. Thank you for that. So, Michelle, one might expect that sales organizations are the hardest hit during a downturn as prospects and renewals start to disappear. Are there things that engineering, product, and/or support teams can proactively do to help their peers in sales?
Yeah, and actually, it's great following Jossie on this question. One of the things that we did is, especially so in my previous company, we did a lot of expense in travel, and travel is not going on right now, right? So, uh, to our company's credit, they got everybody together. They said, we know we're going to take this hit. We can take these initial trends from previous times to show what we can and can't weather on the expense side, on the travel side, where we think we will see the differences. And they pivoted. They actually, we got sales, we got product, we got support, we got all of our various organizations together and said, okay, this was our roadmap. Probably have to throw this out. Now, what does our roadmap
Mhm.
look like? What are the features? And then the other thing that we did, which was really interesting, is we really, really listened to customers and what they wanted. We really had sales. We had it was an all hands on product. We looked at what support was getting in. We looked at what sales wanted to do. We looked at everything, and we came up with, even though people weren't traveling, what was the thing that they really needed. And at the time, I owned the Tripit team, and so we leveraged Tripit and said, okay, well, people aren't traveling, but they need to know about cancellations. People are stuck places. Do you know where they are? So we pivoted and changed our roadmap to actually accommodate what was going on at the time and what people were feeling. And we did the thing, we gave away, um, it's a subscription based model. We gave it away for free for 6 months. We said, everyone needs this. It's really important to them. It was a huge stress relief to have something that organize things in your life in a very unorganized day. It's nice to have at least one thing that's going right and planning things for you. So just pivoting that and listening. And so I think the thing we learned the most is you can all shift, but you can't keep going the same way that you were going. You really all need to stop, listen to the customers, listen to each other, and then redirect, those features to go towards what customers are asking for at a particular moment in time. It may become a long-term business, it may not, but it definitely helps get everybody kind of in alignment and take some of the pressure off.
Great. So, Josie, what new skills have your teams had to acquire during the financial downturns and why?
So I think the big one I've been focusing on is self-care, right? I think it is so important. And especially because we're remote, we're at home, it's very easy to just stay on the computer. I very much encourage my employees to set an end time when they're just going to shut down, right? And like log off, and really to set boundaries around their days. And so that's been a big one I've really been focusing on, because if not, we're just going to get a lot of burnt out people, right? And, also just allowing people to have time to, feel, right? And making it okay to talk about non-work things sometimes, even if it's a work meeting, right? And so it's about kind of shifting, what some of the things we do on a day to day are, but, that's okay. And, I think I've also been encouraging people to learn more about how to effectively write and communicate, because especially to move to a more asynchronous communication that's effective when you're remote first, you actually need to do a lot more writing. So I've been encouraging people as well to, take notes, send action items after your meetings, leverage technology even, Zoom will actually, if you have a paid Zoom plan, it'll actually, if you do the cloud recording, it'll create automatic transcripts for you. They're not perfect, but if somebody wasn't at the meeting, that's going to be a lot better than nothing, right? And so, it's about shifting people's communication styles, what they focus on to really be effective in today's world.
Great, I agree. So switching a little bit more to the more technical, Yvette, what roles, if any, can data science and AI/ML play in helping to build more resilient businesses that can survive economic downturns?
Yeah, great question. Two big things kind of popped into my head. First is just foundationally, typically data science and machine learning teams own the infrastructure that all the business intelligence toolings run on, and everybody at the company hopefully uses to make business decisions every day. So I think just like foundationally shoring up those tools and democratizing access to that data is just so important in a downturn. You have to make sometimes quick decisions. You have to make really important, tough decisions. And having access to the data in a high quality way is just so important in order to be able to do that. Another really beautiful thing I think happens when that data is democratized and you have business people and engineers and product and designers and customer service people and strategy, and really everyone looking at the same data, the same metrics, the same dashboards, and it's high quality. People can then speak each other's languages and really align well with one another. And I think it really helps cross-functional product teams focus. I think it helps with team building. I think it helps them figure out what the right things to do for your customers are. And as Michelle mentioned a lot in her previous question, it's so important to listen to your customers. And I think a data science and an ML team can be that, kind of middle link sometimes between understanding what your customers want and need and sharing that in a cross-functional way to the business. So I think that's one really big area. I think the other area is that those teams can really help the business and pretty much every team in the business size and potentially predict the impact of different opportunities. For example, shipping feature Y versus feature X, or changing your pricing model, or some other significant change that you need to make during a downturn, but you're not sure which ones to do and what impact they might have. I think even more so, obviously you could say that machine learning and data science could ship their own features and their own improvements to their models and improve, whatever metric they're going after by 5 or 10%. That's obviously very big as well, but they're really a multiplier if they can help other teams size the right opportunities. You often have fewer resources during a downturn. And customers are often less forgiving, right? So your margin of error is much smaller when you're operating with fewer people and you have to deliver more to keep your customers happy or acquire new ones. So I think, a data science and machine learning team that can empower all the other teams to focus effort on the right things is just a really big lever for them to pull for the whole company, and a way for them to kind of just massively scale their impact beyond what they could be doing themselves.
Thanks. So, Michelle, are there other technologies people should be evaluating now that have shown that they're able to do more with less?
Yeah, so what's interesting to me is I probably wouldn't have known this as much, even though I was familiar with Twilio prior to going there, but just the way that they've been able to leverage lots of individual developers leverage our platform for a variety of things. But some of the ways that they've leveraged it and some of the ways that we couldn't have predicted is users actually doing things for contact tracing and all of these things that before weren't particularly top of mind, and now they are in these ways, right? Like all of a sudden, to utilize all these APIs as a communication platform that we are, as a platform that handles emails. These are mass ways of getting out information to people. So that, and then just also by extension, the tools that we already know, relearning how to use them is very different. A super small and simple example that I use is Slack. A lot of us use Slack, have used Slack all along. Pretty much none of us put do not disturb on. I'm in a meeting. I'm not available. You just don't, right? Like by default, when you're in an office, I've got it on my phone. I'm a horrible, horrible person that has all of it everywhere, and you can Slack me at any possible moment. That used to be okay because I was traveling a lot, or there were times that those were forced downtimes. We don't have forced downtimes now. This is now a thing, and a large part of the conversation that like my IT team has had is explaining to people the tools and features that already existed. And oh, by the way, have you thought about setting, the pause communications because you're in a meeting? Have you turned on the calendar invite so people understand, or the integration for that you're in a meeting? Have you just said I'm not available and gone offline? Like these are such simple things, but just using these other features in the tools that when you were in an office, you didn't really worry about it because you could get up, you walk around, um, making sure that we do that. And then my other favorite one is there used to be a rule many, many moons ago that if there was more than like a couple threads going in an email, you should take it out of thread and walk over to the person. Okay, use that as take it out of thread, set up a Zoom call. Maybe at this point, the communication is going to get stagnant. Things are missed in writing, which is why what Jossie says is really important. Like communication, how you speak, how it comes across tone can be very much misinterpreted. You could offset it by walking over and talking to someone. That's gone. So just thinking of how you use the tools you already know how to use in a more effective way has been really, really important for everyone.
Great. So, Yvette, too many organizations reach for layoffs and furloughs as go-to tools to control cash flow. What are some of the other tools and strategies decision makers should consider when managing through hard times?
So I think, honestly, the biggest cost for most tech companies like ours are people. I will talk about other ways, but I do think the mistakes I've made the most in the past has been, frankly, to wait too long to lay off or furlough the right amount of people, leading to have to doing more later, which is even just as a well-intentioned leader, it's just so hard. But there are other ways. Michelle mentioned one of them already, which is cutting back travel and entertainment costs. Right? If you have clients, often those are quite high. When I worked doing product development for clients, that was the first thing to go, and our clients were happy about that as well because they often paid for a significant portion of it. But at a classic tech company, slowing down hiring is a huge one. But again, you have to be nuanced about it. I don't think just cutting all your hires is really the right thing to do, because some roles are really going to be necessary for you to come out of the downturn stronger, right? Some roles are going to have a really high benefit, and really doing that cost benefit analysis in a quantitative way, I think, is an important thing to do yourself and also teach your other engineering leaders to do. It's a good muscle to grow during this time. Think about like what roles will add the most value to help the company financially now and when we come out of that downturn. So probably not a blanket cutting of new hires, but real strategic, or even just slowing down. And then usually other costs that are higher at tech companies are probably your software and hosting vendor, IT costs. If you've let those keep ticking up, which sometimes you might not have to do it, but sometimes it's not as high value in the moment to rein those costs in as, say, maybe adding new features to acquire new customers and drive top line revenue, right? But if you let those costs keep ticking up, boy, is this the perfect time to see if it's worth investing time to reducing your SaaS, your cloud hosting, your other software vendor costs. If there is a good business case for it, my advice would be move as fast as you can with clarity and focus about why you're doing that work. Don't obfuscate why you're doing that work to the team. Be really clear that everyone's working on that project because you're going to save some costs, and you can even, I've even seen teams find hundreds of thousands of dollars more when they've been given an OKR metric to, save X amount from the bottom line, right? You can equate it to, how many humans on the team would that be, right? And you don't have to go any further, but people can see the real impact of what they're doing. The things that, I think you should hold off on, by the way, are things that support the people working at the company, right? I think Jossie mentioned D&I budgets getting cut. Like, no way, really bad idea, in my opinion. Like, don't cut professional development. Try not to cut benefits. Don't cut employee experience and office experience stuff. Those tend to be smaller items anyway than all the ones I just mentioned. And leave those for last, because employees really need the support more than ever in a downturn. And if you can't support them well and you're cutting their experience and cutting their professional development, they'll leave as soon as they can anyway, and then you'll have a bigger problem on your hands, and you'll have the best people leaving, which is what you want to avoid during a downturn.
So much truth in that. Thank you. So recently, Airbnb went through some layoffs as well based on the downturn, and there was a write-up on how they went about it and how thoughtful it was. Jossie, when a reduction in force is unfortunately needed, what guidance can you offer for doing it humanely?
So be compassionate, right? Like, I've heard some horror stories of like people getting laid off and the other person like not showing their face on Zoom because like they were too, like, these humans you were laying off, like, lead with empathy, right? Like, that's, consider the other person has a family, right? Like, has responsibilities, and this is going to be a big impact for them. So, make sure when you're communicating this, yeah, hard for the leaders, but make this about them. Don't make this about the company at this point, right? Make this about the employees, like how you are going to help them if you are, right? Like, and do it in small groups, right? Don't put like 100 people on a Zoom call and just like lay everybody off at once, right? Like, that is not going to work. And, be transparent if something like this might be coming up. And, it was interesting, like, HR leaders feel very differently about this. Some are like, no, I don't want to say a word because then people might leave. But I actually saw an HR leader on LinkedIn actually say that, she actually does tell people if she thinks layoffs or a downturn or something might happen, just to prepare people, right? And be transparent and say, hey, look, we're looking at options, right? But this may be where it comes to. And, I think there's a lot of respect for that. And, that would make me want to stay at a company if somebody is willing to say, like, hey, things aren't going to be perfect, but we're going to communicate it clearly.
That's great. And love your answer, because it's a perfect segue into the first question we have from the audience, which is, what have you done to keep employees interested in staying when the environment looks rocky? Why don't we start with Michelle?
So the compassion goes a huge way. Being very open, being very honest, letting them live in the moment and understanding that it is okay to walk away from the computer, to change their times to accommodate it. And also just kind of reminding them, kind of going back to what Yvette said, reminding them that this too shall pass. I mean, we are living in the moment, and it's much harder in the moment. I appreciate that. I'm living in the moment too. But when you come out on the other side of these things, a lot of times there are more jobs. There are going to be different types of jobs. There's going to be all these things that happen. And if you are a truly compassionate leader and company, you're also doing some forward thinking and some strategizing around that as well. So making sure, even you can get hit some of your DNI numbers, you may need to pivot, and maybe now support is huge. Your support team is now taking way more calls than they were before. Are there people that we can, instead of laying them off, maybe we can transition them to another role? You're in the best position to be able to transition them because they already know about your product. They might be able to transition from one role to another. So just looking strategically and making sure you do that. People are very forgiving of a company where people actually care and are looking for ways to take care of their folks.
Great. Yvette, do you have anything to add to that?
Not much, Michelle. I totally agree. I think the one thing I'd add is Laura Hogan has a management framework where managers are doing, some mentoring, some coaching, some sponsorship, right? And I think this is a time where you could really do a great thing for someone on your team by focusing and doubling down on sponsorship. It's really easy to lose sight of career growth and being a sponsor for someone during times like this. And you often can't offer them a pay increase or a promotion yet, or maybe a bigger team, so you're not hiring, and you can't offer them all these other opportunities. But you can really get to know them and figure out how you can be a sponsor for them and help them accomplish something in their career they otherwise thought they wouldn't right then and there. And I think that could go a huge way.
That's great. So we have one other question that's fairly similar to the previous one, but it's really specifically about employee nervousness around the risk of future layoffs. So, you have one set of layoffs because of an unexpected downturn, which then triggers thoughts of, will there be more? Will there be more? I've personally lived through in the .com era having, back-to-back layoffs over the span of a couple of months. Definitely nerve-wracking. So what are some thoughts that you might have in terms of addressing some of these fears of employees about, will there be more layoffs? Will I be in the next round? Jossie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying about being transparent, right? And when you're planning layoffs, like Yvette was mentioning earlier, try to make sure you're planning enough of a layoff so you're not going to hopefully have to have another one in a month, right? Because honestly, your employees do the hit once, right? Like you might think, oh, let me lay off the minimum number of people now because then, it's going to be okay. Make the hard cut and be conservative, right? Realize, hey, this is a downturn. We don't know where it's going to go. Do conservative estimates and then be transparent with people, right? And say, hey, look, we're trying really hard to not have another round of layoffs because, we looked at it this way, and this way when we did the first round, and be transparent. And if you do have to have another one, then you're going to have the conversation with them and be like, hey, why are we having this other round? And say, look, hey, we estimated the business was going to go here, but unfortunately, COVID lasted through the summer, right? Nobody could have predicted if that was going to happen or not, right? And I think it's about, on the similar to something one of the questions was earlier, under skills we can help our employees gain. I think resilience is one of them, right? There's a lot of unknowns, not just about layoffs, but about everything going on in the world today. And so I think if you help your employees with resilience, it'll help them with unknowns in general.
Great. All right. Looking to see if there are any more questions. Doesn't appear so. So I'd like to ask one last question, which is, do you have any parting words for our audience, especially in this incredibly trying time, something that might maybe help uplift them or give them hope as we go forward? Let's start with Yvette.
I really just keep coming back to, as a leader, painting a picture of what the other side of things looks like for your team. But you first have to convince yourself, right? In order to be authentic and paint that picture, you need to be an optimist. You need to know that things are going to get better. You need to focus on that yourself. And I think reading, writing, talking in that way a bit, so that when you tell that story, it's an authentic, heartfelt story. And, in as real a way as you can, try to weave that into all hands meetings and one-on-ones and written communications. There's, knock wood, right? There's never been a recession that hasn't passed, and it always feels like it's going to be way longer when you're in it than when you look back on it. And painting that picture of what it's going to look and feel like, I think is the thing that is really hard to do. But when I've been able to do it, I think I've helped people the most.
Amazing. Jossie, any parting words?
So, I've been telling my team members, there's so much we can't control right now. So let's focus on those things that we can control, right? And, for me, one of the things I've been taking a positive spin at is, hey, now I don't have to commute. And that is like 9 hours of my week back every week. So what can I spend those 9 hours on that make me happy? Right? Oh yes, I don't ever want to do this commute again. So yeah, think of, and spend some time to think with gratitude about the things that are going well. Because there's a lot going wrong in the world, but like I said, there are some positives, right? I don't have to commute. I'm very grateful to that, right? And so, I every day I at the end of the day I write 3 things I'm grateful for, and that's really just kind of helped me with keeping positivity during these times.
That's awesome. And finally, Michelle, some parting thoughts?
So what I've consistently told like people I mentor as well as just my teams is forgive yourself. It's really okay. And guard your mental health. What I find interesting, and I can say this as a black person in America, especially with a lot of the things that on top of the pandemic are going on, you just don't get a mental break. And I, have a 14-year-old son, and I literally had to tell him, you will not look on news. You will not be on iPad. We're going to sit and play a game. Because the one thing I like being informed, but there is such a thing as overload and not guarding your health and your mental health. And as my father always said, you can't take care of everybody else if you're down. You're sick and you're so sick, you can't take care of everybody else. So it's okay to forgive yourself for needing to take time for yourself. It's okay to say, I can't engage in every single thing going on because I just don't have the capacity and I can't. And that's okay. Like that is, and we need to make a very, very clear delineation that it is okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to even not be happy all the time. That's a feeling. If you don't feel it and work through it, it's not a great thing. It will come back in some way that you are not prepared to handle. So feeling what you feel and making sure that you guard your mental health and just taking that time for yourself is the best thing you can do for yourself. And believe it or not, it will have major benefits for the company. So and everyone involved. So doing that for you actually has benefits that are long lasting for everyone.
Those words definitely resonate with me. Um, I'd like to thank Jossie Haines, Michelle Grover, and Yvette Pasqua for contributing to this important discussion. If you'd like to continue the discussion, please join us in Slack. Thank you.